the media has contributed to the downfall, frankly, of the Democrat Party. I mean, it wasn't what they intended, of course, but because they kept spouting all these lies, Americans lost faith in those institutions and consequently gravitated over to newer personalities and talent and newer mechanisms by which this content is delivered. Hello, hello. Look at me right here on YouTube. Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Make a comment. I do read them all. When I look at CBS right now, I'm encouraged that they have somebody like Barry Weiss coming in who left the New York Times because of the New York Times bias and is trying to remake that newsroom. But I'm also just a realist. I don't think you're going to get there. Like, I'm sorry, Barry, love you, but you know what? Like, you've got some institutional left-wing bias that's been there going all the way back to Watergate. I mean, like, and they don't have a lot of spring chickens there. What is Leslie Stahl, like 87, 89? I mean, my friend Sharon Alfonsi, she's a good egg. She's from Mississippi and Texas, so, you know, she thinks differently perhaps than the rest. She's over at 60 Minutes, and she's a little older than me, I think. So, like, let's just say when you're the kid and, you know, you've been doing this for decades, it's a little weird, but she is the kid. Leslie is very much up there. I don't know how old Scott Pelley is, but he's like knocking on Leslie's decade for sure. You got some older people there and they run the show. So how does Barry Weiss, who's like 40, come in and change things? She's going to have to fire a lot of people. Some of these people are being fired already. I mean, Colbert, he was already told, you're not getting a renewal on that contract. I mean, for goodness sakes, you're losing millions, tens of millions of dollars a year. You really think you're going to stay in business like that in a new day and age when all of this can be done so much more cheaply? I don't think so. And now Colbert, I think he wants his job back. He went on a podcast this week and started insisting that he's conservative. Yeah. He says, well, I'm a lot more conservative than some people think. Oh, buddy, you're really getting desperate, aren't you? You must need that money.
I share those feelings with the audience. And they laugh or they don't laugh, and that there's a sense of community there. And, you know, the demographics of these shows are interesting, too. It's about a third, a third, a third. It's about a third Republicans, third Democrats, third Independents. You'd think, you know, people perceive me as this sort of lefty figure. I think I'm more conservative than people think. I just happen to be talking about a government in extremis.
Yeah.
And so what I'm giving you is my reaction video to the day. and my reaction video is like, you know, is like the Scream.
Yeah.
In a way. but with jokes.
Well, with jokes, yeah.
And so that makes people perceives me as more left necessarily than I am, because I'm not sure what other reaction would be an honest one. It's hard to have a balanced reaction to the idea of troops on street of a city that actually is not undergoing an invasion. Is any other reaction honest other than to
horror? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but jokes about the
I'm
horror.
sorry. No. I think you just did yourself in with that one, Stevie. Like, you're like, I really am conservative, except how can you not have this reaction? So that would kind of tell me that maybe you're not so conservative. I mean, I think it's kind of a natural thing to want to have safe cities. And if the local politicians can't keep people safe, then, hey, isn't that the job of the government? Like, what do you need government for? You know, hey, live free or die, right? Libertarian New Hampshire, roots here. You really don't need government for much except for, I don't know, the basic necessity of keeping people safe, right? Let's go back to, you know, the right to pursuit of happiness and our Constitution. And if you can't do that because you live in a lawless land like the likes of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, trust me, you don't have the same opportunities, or the inner city of Baltimore. No, right? So maybe that's a time when it makes sense, or Washington, D.C., for the federal law enforcement to say, okay, state, you're not doing your job. We need to make sure that we're protecting all the people of this land. So the fact that he doesn't get that tells me he's definitely not conservative, not at all. But you keep trying, Stephen. I guess the millions of dollars you're getting paid are really important. You must not have invested very well.
The horror.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't,
which is
like one. And so those two things together, or those three things together, is the beginning of a case of why these shows should exist.
My thanks to our friends at MRC for that. You don't think it's kind of beneath you, Stephen, to be trying to pretend you're a conservative right now after all the things that you have said? Like I said, you probably just didn't invest that well. Charlotte, I will talk about investing in just a moment. Stephen Colbert is not the only one that is potentially out of a gig in the unemployment line over at CBS. There's another anchor who's reported to make anywhere from $10 to $15 million a year, which I would say is $9 to $14 million too much for her, especially given that they are in last place at CBS News. She does happen to be a very good friend, the very best friend of one Oprah Winfrey. Her name is Gayle King, and she suddenly read about herself in the papers the other day. You see, Variety had the exclusive saying, Gayle's out, her contract's up in 26, and Barry Weiss doesn't want to pay this much. I mean, why would anybody want to pay that much? I mean, like, let's, it's just business, okay? It's not personal. I mean, it is kind of interesting that both Stephen and Gayle happen to be like besties with Oprah, but we'll leave that aside. Let's just assume it's not personal. It's just business. Would you really pay an anchor of like a show that is not doing that well? That much money? What's she bringing in for you? Other than, a relationship with Oprah, but I don't see Oprah on the show every week. Maybe if Oprah will do a spot once a week, I'm not sure Oprah could get anybody to watch either. I mean, just think about how much money she was paid, allegedly $2 million, according to the New York Times, to do that little spot on YouTube with Kamala Harris. We get more views like in a day than they did in a month, okay? Like that did not go very well. So I'm not sure that Oprah's the answer either. Like this kind of media is just done. It's over. It's passé, and good. But Gayle found out the hard way by reading Variety that she was out of a gig, reportedly, and she was asked about it by TMZ. TMZ, who just happens to be standing outside the CBS entrance, she encouraged them to get a picture of the actual address. I'm not sure why. But anyway, TMZ, you wonder if it was a setup, waiting for her. Gayle knew the reporter, and then she stops and talks and responds to the Variety article saying, Gayle King expected to depart CBS Mornings amid CBS News overhaul. Believe me, they need an overhaul. And I don't think the overhaul still, I'm sorry, is going to work. But here's Gayle's response.
Good to see you. It was very, very shocking to see those reports yesterday. We're all wondering if you might be going in another direction. Do you have an answer as of yet?
No, all I can say is this. From what I'm being told inside this building, take a shot, 524 West 56. All I've been told by everybody in this building is that they want me here. They like the job I'm doing. I like the job I'm doing. I'll say this. I like the job and the people that I work with. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you about it. But what I'm hearing in the building is not what I'm reading in the press. And what I'm not going to do is negotiate in the media. Not doing that.
All right. Do you have an idea like what things might look like in May if the show's going in another direction?
I have no idea.
No idea.
All I know is I am here. I am here and glad to be here.
I'm happy to see that, Miss
Bye,
King.
Tiffany.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, so she doesn't seem to know which end is up there. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't want to negotiate in public, but apparently she's having to do so, or maybe she'll just be out of a job. They're talking about maybe giving her some kind of incubated production stream. So I don't know, she can do a podcast. Here's the problem. All right, I'm just going to level with you. A lot of people in this business rely very heavily on producers and scripts and questions that are written for them by a bunch of 22-year-olds. And that's just kind of how the business is. And so you get somebody who kind of has some kind of commanding presence, maybe on camera. Often they don't. In fact, I think that the industry is filled with producers that handpick talent because they think they'll be good, or maybe they're just friends with somebody, but they really don't understand what makes a show work. I'm going to tell you what makes a show work. And it has nothing to do with looks. It has nothing to do with, what you wear or any of that. Like maybe that helps on the margin. I know my dad, every time we'd like go through the channels and he'd click through the channels and we'd get to like Univision and boom, he'd stop because the ladies on Univision, let me tell you, and he doesn't speak any Spanish. So it can help on the margin, but it's not going to sustain something. So you don't need the looks. What you need is some kind of genuine passion for what you're doing. And that's very, very rare. I mean, I look at that boring guy on CNN that's being paid $15 million. That's, again, $14 million too much. Anderson Cooper. There's no passion there. There's no excitement there. And then you get people, I'm going to take a shot at Chris Cuomo, whose brother, the president called a thug and just lost the election to Mamdani. And he's on some new network. And maybe he's animated, but there's not a lot of intelligence there. So you need somebody who's passionate about what they do, who's intelligent, and who actually kind of lives, sleeps, eats, and breathes this stuff. If you're in the news business, you got to really be in the news business. I joke about my special talent, opera trivia. Just dare to try and beat me. The other special talent is having an enormous recall for like every soundbite for the last 20 years since I've been in the business, right? Like anything I've ever watched, like somehow gets logged in my memory. Yeah. And that's why sometimes you see me play sound bites from the past, again, because I want to remind you guys of the things that have happened. So you need to understand what's been going on, right? In order to understand the present and hopefully the future. You also need to understand what the other side is saying in order to really have an articulated viewpoint on what you believe. I think it was Joan Didion, the author, who was once asked why she wrote. And she wrote this brilliant essay on why I write. And I remember reading this and thinking, it's a lot of what I do. Like, why do I do this every day? The kids joke, when mom's like completely senile. When I get to be Nancy Pelosi's form of senile, you can just put me up here in the studio and I'll just keep going and going and going. And it might be the one thing that keeps me going because I am passionate about it and I do love it. And I think that you need that sort of baseline. And that's very rare to find. And then sure, voice and personality and all these other things help, but you need that. And what they have at CBS are a bunch of people that read a prompter. And a bunch of people that read a prompter that was written by, some other producers behind the scenes that maybe or maybe not really know what's going on. And then you get a bunch of questions. I see it all the time on CNN. In fact, I think Anderson Cooper's been guilty of this. They have another woman whose mom was Miss America, who's just a train wreck because you can tell. Like somebody will say something and they answer a question. And then the anchor comes back asking the exact same thing that the person just answered. And I'm always like, are you not listening? Short answer, no, they're not listening. They're reading their questions in the prompter. And so they don't hear what somebody actually says. It's wild. Like the industry's filled with that. Okay, so you don't need to pay them that much money. I mean, Barry Weiss is figuring that out. Do I really need to pay a prompter reader this kind of money? Short answer, no. Okay, but can Gayle King make it on her own? Could she go off script and just host a podcast and talk to people? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if she's talented enough to do that. I don't think she is. I mean, I've seen the show a few times, and I'm probably being unfair. I don't have any commercials in this show, guys, so occasionally you need to fix the lip gloss. If you're listening on audio, you really need to tune into the video. By the way, go check me out on Spotify. I'm going to put that in the show notes again because we're up to I think we're up to almost 15,000. So hey, we are getting there. We are getting there. That's really important. You got to start somewhere. I really appreciate everything that you are doing, certainly on the Spotify front. If you could also leave a review, 5 stars only, please, that would be awesome. Really, really, really awesome. But I think that, the reality for someone like Gayle or anybody else over there at CBS, Norah O'Donnell is another example. I mean, I can't imagine her off prompter. I think she's a very nice person. what happens when the prompter goes down? What you got? I've always said, all I can ever be on TV is myself, right? That's all I got. So I can't sort of read something and pretend to be someone else. I can only be who I am, which means you have to know who you are. Going back to what Joan Didion in the Why I Write essay, she said one of the reasons that she writes is because she wants to know what she thinks about something. And I think about news events, and sometimes there's stories I don't cover on this show because I don't have a passionate response to them. I mean, the Blake Lively, whatever his name, Baldoni story, you lost me on that one. I mean, I really didn't care, right? So I tried because the story was apparently enormously popular. But if I don't really love it, I can't actually convey any kind of enthusiasm or passion to you. Therefore, why should you care about it? If I don't care about it, why would you care about it? And so a lot of what I like to do is look out at the full universe of stories and say, what is it that hits me? And if it's not hitting me right away, I'll dig deeper and do more research and more research and more research to find something that makes something relevant. I'm not sure that the talent, quote unquote talent at CBS does this. You know what? I'm gonna say something positive about somebody that you probably don't like. Rachel Maddow. I don't think, well, obviously I don't agree with anything Rachel Maddow believes, and I think that actually she often takes people in a very dangerous direction. So as a journalist, she's not there. But as a communicator, she's got something going on. And it's not the looks, okay? I mean, she wears the same black suit every single day, and I don't even know if there's any makeup on her. But the point is, I do believe she believes in what she's talking about. And so there's a passion that comes through. And while it may not be for you or me, it's real. And that genuine sort of desire to convey a message is what separates people in this industry right now. So the old guard, legacy media, they're reading a prompter. They really don't care. They're phoning it in. They don't know what they think. I mean, heck, Jake Tapper, for goodness sakes, one day he's telling us Biden's brilliant. And then the next day he's got a book out on the media's failure to recognize how off he was. And I'm like, hey, you really don't believe in anything except perhaps the almighty dollar. Has to be more than money to succeed in this. And I consider myself a success thanks to you guys, because we're celebrating over 1 million subs here on this channel. We need some work on Spotify. Don't forget to go and check out my Spotify channel. But this is the new reality. A very new reality. And unfortunately, if you're working at a place like CBS or NBC or ABC, you're surrounded by a team of producers that all have their views. And so you get too many cooks in the kitchen. And before you know it, you're running an interview with the President of the United States on 60 Minutes, the first you've gotten in 5 or 6 years. And when he says the important part about why the shutdown is still going on, you delete it. Now, I don't know if that was Nora that deleted it. It could have been a producer. It could have been multiple producers. We don't really know, but we don't have the transparency into any of this because it's such a top-heavy organization with a bunch of prompter readers that don't really understand or really care. And this is the segment I'm talking about here when he spoke on CBS on Sunday night and said something important, but you didn't hear it.
Give us an extension. We'll work it out. They've lost their way. They become crazed lunatics. And all they have to do, Nora, is
This is what they aired.
Let's vote.
So, Hakeem...
Senate Democrats say they will vote to reopen the government if Republicans agree to extend subsidies for over 20 million Americans who use Obamacare for their health insurance.
All we're saying, give us an extension. We'll work it out. They've lost their way. They become crazed lunatics. And all they have to do, Nora, is say, let's vote. And you can open, the economy could open up during our interview.
Is there something you can
Maybe
do,
it
though?
did.
Is there something you
All I
can
can
do to bring
is
this to
give
an
the
end?
facts. Here's what I can't do.
This is important, okay?
I can't give them $1.5 trillion so that they can give welfare to people that came into our country illegally, so that prisoners and that people from mental institutions and people that are drug dealers get vast amounts of money for health care. That I can't.
That he can't do. But that wasn't in there. They edited that out. I mean, you'd think they'd learn their lesson. I mean, maybe they thought it was innocuous enough. I actually think it's kind of a vital part of the entire story, right? Why is the shutdown still going on? Because there's $1.5 trillion that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put in back in the days of 2020 after COVID, and it was supposed to be there temporarily to help people. And now it's still there, and we can't afford it. And it's going to all these hospitals for the treatment of illegals. Peace of my mind. You're right. I mean, peace of my mind pointing out what would have happened if Trump hadn't released this entire interview. And Donald Trump thankfully did. It was actually really kind of great. I mean, they put it out on the White House feed. They're like, here, watch it all in full so you can see the entire thing. And it's like, thank you. Thank you, because we've been unfortunately manipulated with the news industry that's like paint by numbers. They have their little, okay, this is our thesis. Trump is bad. Kamala is good. So now we're going to feed the Trump is bad. And you know, MRC has done this research, otherwise known as Newsbusters, and they've got like 99% horrible coverage of Donald Trump leading up to the election and 99% amazing coverage of one Kamala Harris. And then you think back to that infamous interview that Bill Whitaker, again, I used to work with Bill. I can't really tell you. I mean, it's like wallpaper, right? Like so many of their talent are like wallpaper. They don't really feel like they stand for anything. And I think in this new industry and in this new world, oh, thank God I'm here, you have to stand for something. You have to have some conviction and you have to have some passion. Otherwise, you get editors doing all kinds of things to your interviews, and before you know it, you're making Kamala Harris sound like, woo, she's one smart cookie, and we know she's not, remember? Rather amazing how the mainstream media can edit these questions to make some people look better. The original.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
And they edited.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Yeah, version 2 was better. Right. So somebody deserves an Emmy Award for actually making this woman sound like she's really smarter than she is. Kamala Harris was not an articulate individual, certainly. I don't know her in her private life, but certainly in her public life. And I think Americans caught on to that, despite the media's attempt to massage her and to make her seem like something that she really wasn't. And I mean that, something that she really wasn't. I don't know who Kamala Harris is. I really don't. I mean, and that gets back to, you know, whether you're talking about talent in the media or you're talking about a politician. The reality is Americans feel like they know Trump and they understand Trump. And that is meaningful. That is meaningful. Okay, Charlotte, I promised I'd talk a little bit about the markets, and I want to just remind you all to go to 76 Research because we got a lot of market talk on 76 Research. You can subscribe for $1 a month to the 76 Research newsletter. 76 Research is my company, and I run it with a longtime dear friend who is a savant on stocks. But I'm not too shabby myself. I've been covering the market for many, many years, and I'm looking at a Dow that's off 1%, S&P off 1.18%, NASDAQ off 1.7% today. The NASDAQ leading stocks lower ahead of a Tesla vote on Musk's pay. Don't forget, he had been promised a pay package, and then there were some lawyers that decided they thought it was too onerous. I mean, forget about their fees. Their fees were like crazy onerous. They were getting paid massive amounts just because they started this class action lawsuit against one Elon Musk. He wound up actually relocating his company out of Delaware law. It was in California. He relocated it to Texas, and he's taking the law that it used to be decided in Delaware courts and moving it to Texas as a result. So that's very much on focus. We see NVIDIA that's really struggling. Actually, Rob and I wrote a piece. Actually, there's more Rob the other day because he has a sailing buddy that called him up and said, hey, I got a lot of money in NVIDIA. This guy, he like a zillion years ago, like when NVIDIA was first on the scene, put money in NVIDIA, put money in two stocks. One was a cannabis stock. The other was NVIDIA. And the cannabis one went to nothing, but NVIDIA obviously has soared. And so he's really worried about whether or not this is sustainable, this rally. And so again, I encourage you to go to 76research.com, use code word dollar. It's $1 a month for the first 2 months. So you can get our take on what's really going on there and whether, deep seek is the threat that some people think it is. Look, I will tell you this, I'm not going to bet against America. Anytime the market goes down, I go longer. I have a different time horizon than most people. If you're looking to retire next year, I think you're going to have a different set of facts than somebody like me who's really in it for the long haul and believes passionately in the changes that are coming and the technological changes that are coming. I think they're going to be quite massive. And this is my view, and I share that a lot on 76 Research. But I think it's always important to remain calm, to not be reactionary. Look at what happened in April. Right, with tariffs, and the market tanked, and so many people, they're, oh my God, I'm going to sell. And I'll use Charlie Kirk, my late friend Charlie Kirk, actually, who did the smart thing like I did in 2020 when the market was tanking because CNN was telling you that COVID was going to shut down the world and the economy forever, and everything sold off massively, and they were running it like it was like their plain story over and over again. The market's taking 2,000 points on the Dow. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You really think you're going to bet against America? You're going to bet against humanity? And Charlie tells the story, or did tell the story, of how he went totally long triple Qs. Actually, he hedged the triple Qs. So he basically was able to make even much more money because it was it was not a hedge, forgive me. It was an options vehicle. So he did even better. But my point being, I don't really, at this stage in my life, and again, we're all in different stages, I don't believe in betting against the USA. I think there's a lot more good to come. But you have to do your own thing. And I would encourage you to go to 76 Research. Listen, it's great to have everybody here. Thank you for all that you're doing to make this show a success. Love seeing you all. Love all the comments. And we've got a good little crowd here, don't you think? I think so. Make sure you go check out Spotify. I'll see you back here live tomorrow at a later time, I think. Hit the bell, then you'll know.